This is the Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast, Episode 26. The Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast is a bi-weekly podcast dedicated to the world of scuba diving, ocean health, sustainability, and fostering a new generation of ocean stewards through diving education. Hello again, everyone, and thanks again for tuning into the podcast. I'm Jeff Centropino, your host and the founder and president of the Scuba Educational Alliance of Connecticut. Our mission is to foster a new generation of ocean stewards by breaking down the financial barriers that young people face when pursuing scuba diving and becoming national ambassadors for the ocean. Well, it's hard to believe that it's September already, and today is yet another somber anniversary of the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center in 2001. I can remember that day vividly, the horror and the sadness followed by a national unity, a unity that we can certainly use right now. Today, episode 26 is also a milestone in that I've now been doing this podcast for a year. Actually, the first episode was on September 19th, 2024. Close enough. Doing something like this is a bit of work, but it is work that I enjoy and hopefully will continue to do my best to provide relevant information and thoughts around what is happening with our blue planet. My featured segment today discusses the challenges faced by the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee's work on a plastic treaty. It's pretty distressing. But up first, let's get some news and information updates with Seastate. This is Seastate here on the Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast for Thursday, September 11th, 2025. Up first, I wanted to make sure that you're aware of another underwater photo contest. This current contest is sponsored by Reef out of Key Largo, and it's their annual Discover the Sea photo contest. It opened up for submissions on September 1st. Unlike some other contests where you have a fair amount of time to enter, this one has a tight window. Submissions close at 12 p.m. noon Eastern Time on September 19th, so that's just over a week from this taping. There are 5 categories. 4 of them are holdovers, including fish portraits, macro, invertebrates, along with habitat, seascapes, and environment. Plus, they've added a new category this year, comedy. Yes, you can submit funny faces, unexpected ocean moments, photo bombs, or anything that you think will tickle their funny bone. Entries are free, and you can submit up to 3 photos per person in each category, so you can enter up to 15 photos. Once submissions close, online voting starts September 20th and ends September 30th. So even if you don't enter, you can still vote in this contest. So you can check it out at www.reef.org/photocontest. Let's talk about a couple of magazine updates. Divers Alert Network's Alert Diver Third Quarter 2025 edition is out. The cover shot is from Aldabra Atoll, and that's in the Seychelles, of a black-tipped reef shark in the shallows at night. Pretty impressive. Now, like always, the magazine is packed with so many interesting and thought-provoking articles that cover a wide variety of topics. One fascinating article is by Chris Harvey Clark, titled, "It Takes a Village to Raise a Whale." Stories about how the team worked to hang the skeleton of a 70-foot blue whale in the Beatty Biodiversity Center on the Delaware University campus that's in Halifax, Nova Scotia. It took years. You can also read about how drones are being used to enhance diver safety. And if you're looking at places to visit, there are articles on Little Cayman and Dominica. Now, I look forward to each edition and checking out all the normal sections along with the incredible features. This hard copy is delivered to your mailbox with the enhanced membership. For me, that's a must, and I just renewed for another year. Well, the third quarter 2025 Journal of Diving History arrived last week. This is one of the longest continuously published magazines in the diving industry and is a benefit of membership in the Historical Diving Society in the U.S. Now, I'm also helping the society with their membership committee, and I gotta tell you, the magazine is worth the price of the annual membership, as it is packed with great information about our diving past. There were two announcements in this edition that I thought I would note. First, Joan Forsberg has been elected as the chair of the society. She takes over from Tom Ingram. Second, Catherine Castle Garcia is joining the journal team as the senior editor. Catherine has a long history with the scuba diving publications, having been the executive editor of both Dive Training and Dive Center business magazines. There are several really great articles. One is about the U.S. Navy women's divers celebrating 50 years. And there's another one on Bernie Campoli's journey from Navy SEAL to Sea Lab. Again, this outstanding magazine is part of your membership in the Historical Diving Society. Every year right around this time, I like to let everyone know that the Women Divers Hall of Fame has opened up their scholarship and grant applications. Their online submissions opened up on September 1st, and their deadline for applications is October 31st at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. They're pretty strict about that. This year, the WDHOF, as they're called, are offering 36 different scholarships and training grants. There are two new ones this year. First, there is the $10,000 scholarship titled the Captain Wayne Hassan Memorial Fellowship, and that's for climate research. The second new scholarship is a $2,500 Ocean and Human Health Graduate Scholarship. The program includes 6 basic training grants, 2 advanced training grants, along with other grants spread across professional, technical, scientific, instructor, and photography training. Some of the grants are specifically targeted at women, while others are open to all. Last year, the Women Divers Hall of Fame funded 68 independent programs totaling $95,500. Wow, that's impressive. But again, the deadline for application is on Halloween. Trick or treat. There's a new species of manta. Recently on the Oceana website, there was a blog post by Corinne Laird that headlined "A New Manta in the Atlantic. Meet Mobila urea." Well, it took a while, but the species is finally confirmed. You see, back in 2009, Marine Megafauna Foundation's co-founder, Dr. Andrea Mitchell, predicted this when she spotted an unusual manta off of Mexico. Then in 2017, a deceased ray washed up in Florida, and scientists began doing genetic testing and physical examinations of the dead ray. Now, after 15 years of research, the new species, Mobila urea, is confirmed. The manta can be found in the tropical and subtropical waters along the eastern U.S. all the way down to Brazil and in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. It took a long time because this newly identified species closely resembles other known manta species. One thing we can always count on is that there are probably many more mysteries in the ocean. That's why we go there, to explore and encounter a whole new world. A world that we need to protect. And finally, another drone story. Earlier I talked about how drones are being used for diver safety. Well, New England researchers are using drone technology to monitor climate change impacts on whales. This story comes from a Marine Technology News article published on September 3rd. They're using drones to monitor North Atlantic right whales here in the Northeast, but also working on monitoring killer whales in the Gulf of Alaska. The drones take high-resolution aerial photos that researchers then use to measure the body length, and also they are able to assess the health by understanding the whale's condition and growth. The article discussed the impacts on the orcas from the marine heat wave that happened in 2014 through 2016 and their slow recovery. Additionally, monitoring right whales has shown that as the climate changes and the oceans heat up, they are shifting their feeding areas to colder water. Colder water puts them in danger of entanglement and vessel strikes. Drones are becoming so prolific and can be such a valuable tool in supporting ocean health and sustainability. Well, that's it for this installment of CSATE here on the Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast. There was an article recently that caught my attention that was put out by the Plastic Pollution Coalition. It reported on the disappointing results from the recently completed UN Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee's meetings that happened in Geneva, Switzerland on August 5th through the 15th. The Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee is tasked with coming up with a plastic treaty. The article reported that the process was riddled with distractions and delay tactics on behalf of the fossil fuel industry and plastic-friendly countries. So, while no treaty was agreed to, the Plastic Pollution Coalition feels that no treaty yet is better than a weak treaty now. Let's take a look at the history here first. Way back in March 2022, at the end of the United Nations Environmental Assembly, representatives from 175 nations agreed on a mandate to create a first-of-its-kind, internationally binding instrument to end plastic pollution. And they wanted to do this by addressing the full life cycle of plastic from extraction to disposal. The goal was to get this done by 2024. Well, that deadline has come and gone, and now who knows where it stands. The recently concluded meetings were the sixth such gathering since 2022. They started the first conference, INC1, that was in December of 2022. And then they followed that by INC2 in May and June of 2023. By November 2023, INC3 convened in Nairobi, Kenya. Then, in Ottawa, INC4 was held in April of 2024, with INC5 in November 2024 in Busan, Korea. And now, INC5-2 just wrapped up in Geneva. So they've certainly been meeting, but what's the problem? One of the key problems is that there is intense lobbying being conducted at the meetings by the fossil fuel and plastic industries. Just how much? Well, let's take a look at that with a publication that Greenpeace put out. Plastic, Profit, and Power: How Petrochemical Companies Are Derailing the Global Plastic Treaty. Now, this report was published in July 2025, just before the August INC 5-2 meetings, and it sort of paints the picture of what would pretty much be a dud for gaining a plastic treaty. The report outlines the three main things that the lobbyists at the meeting wanted. First, they want no caps on virgin plastic production, so let's just keep adding more. Second, these companies wanted the treaty to focus on recycling and waste management, not production. Well, we're going to keep creating more and more without the capacity to recycle or manage. And finally, they wanted the treaty to focus on chemical recycling as a core. I'm not familiar with chemical recycling of plastic, but it sure doesn't sound that good. I'll have to do some more research on that. So essentially, the lobbyists at the conference want to expand their production while shifting the responsibility for plastic pollution to the consumer and government. Make a mess and leave it for someone else to clean up. So just who are sending lobbyists to the INC? Here are the top 8 companies: Dow, ExxonMobil, BASF, Chevron, Phillips, Shell, SABIC, and INEOS. I wasn't familiar with SABIC or INEOS. SABIC is a petrochemical company run by the Saudis, and best I can tell, INEOS is also a petrochemical company, and I think they're based in London but started in Antwerp. At INC5 in 2024, there were 220 fossil fuel and chemical industry lobbyists at the conference, and that has more than doubled since the INC2 meetings in 2023. This represents the single largest delegation at the conference. Now, it isn't just companies that are sending representatives. There are trade associations like the American Chemical Council, ACC, Plastic Europe, the American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers, AFPM, and the European Chemical Industry Council. What's at stake for these companies and the industry? Huge profits at the expense of the planet. 99% of plastic is made from oil and gas. And while alternative energy sources are continuing to expand, the oil and gas industry needs to pivot a bit. And with the continued expansion of plastic production, it is estimated in the report that by 2040, plastic production will be 45% of net oil demand. Now that's a big number, and a big number that the industry desperately wants to protect. Here are some figures from the case study of the Plastic, Profit, and Power Report. Since the talks began in December 2022, Dow has earned $5.1 billion from plastics, while ExxonMobil's number tops out at $5.3 billion. In 2023, Shell earned $320 million from plastic production, and that went to $956 million in 2024. Staggering. And to think that all this plastic is entering the environment and the oceans with way too little being done to prevent this from happening. The playbook for the lobbyist is something we've seen before in also many areas where big business is putting profits ahead of everything else. First is delay, and that's by dragging out the timelines. Then distract, by focusing on waste and recycling versus production. Next, discredit by undermining the scientific information and the civil society voices. And finally, dominate by funding large delegations to the talks. So what does Greenpeace recommend? 1. Ban fossil fuel and petrochemical lobbyists from plastic treaty negotiations and future conferences on plastic. 2. Embed a strong conflict of interest policy in the treaty. And 3. Ensure meaningful public and scientific participation. Unfortunately, I believe it's too late for a plastic treaty. The report concludes with this statement. If the goal is to end plastic pollution, the rules cannot be written by those who profit from it. The amount of money that is spent on lobbying efforts is enormous. Just think of all the people that money could help. Seems like we can and should do better. Well, that wraps up this latest episode of the podcast. Once again, thanks for listening, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks with more. Until then, take care, everyone. This has been the Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast, a show dedicated to the world of scuba diving, ocean health, sustainability, and fostering a new generation of ocean stewards through diving education. Talk to you again real soon.